Mr. Speaker, um, the Tourism Levy Act, Mr. Speaker, I want to just deal with the Schedule 1. Mr. Speaker, I heard the Minister try to explain that, and I just need, if you would think it wise to explain to me. He said that the hotels that do not wish to be part of the marketing of the St. Lucia as a destination do not have to pay the levy. That's what he said. That's what you said. Yeah, I don't mind, Mr. Speaker. You can
yeah, Mrs. Speaker, just on a point of clarification, as it relates to the voluntary aspect of being a collector or participating, that was meant for the informal sector. So if, for example, you are an apartment owner, you have a few apartments downstairs and you're an Airbnb, Expedia, or VRBO, which is really an unregulated sector at present, you can participate if you wish. You don't have to. But it is mandatory that all hotels which are currently benefiting from incentives, all registered properties must participate in the collection of the levy.
So, thank you. So all hotels that are registered are the ones pay a levy?
Yes.
Right. So in that case, unless a Airbnb is not registered, doesn't have to pay the levy?
No.
On what point does it get into the registration?
Well, there is a clause in the bill which allows them to voluntarily do so, because we do appreciate Mr. Leader of the opposition. Once they apply for concessions, they must. But as well, even though they're not benefiting, they can still register, because we do understand the benefit to a number of small properties by being on the Tourism Authority website, for example, by being able to register for marketing programs, for example. But they must collect the fee from the guests that are staying in their various establishments.
All right. Thank you. Now, Mr. Speaker, the accommodation tax, as stated in the levy, is per guest and is charged on the nightly rate, or the nightly rate, in that case, the average daily rate or the nightly rate. I understand what that means. Now, the all-inclusive guest that is involved, that when they sell a tour or they sell a room, they sell it with food and beverage. So they pay per guest. Now the hotel that does not sell an all-inclusive package, they pay the 7% per guest, and do they have to pay the 10% on their food and beverage and etc.? No. So, all right.
Honorable Prime Minister, we're in debating.
Through you, Chair. The all-inclusive rate...
Honorable Prime Minister.
Oh, my apologies. The all-inclusive rate is at 10%, which it's impossible to separate the food and the beverage part from it. So remember, so the amount would be greater. That's why the amount that they're paying on a per head tax is higher. So instead of paying 3, they're paying 6 per person. If anything that's less than $120, which is generally the EP properties, they're paying $3 per person.
All right. Now the EP property pays 3 or 6, whatever. Yeah. Then. Now, do they have to pay 10% on the food and beverage that they charge? They have to pay. So theoretically, the EP may be disadvantaged, or they may pay more tax.
Mr. Speaker?
Yeah, sure, I can.
No
Mr. Speaker,
no, because exactly what the Minister of Tourism pointed out, in fact, the consumer is paying it. So when you go to a restaurant at a hotel, and you get your bill, it'll be the bill plus the 10%. So it's the consumer that's really paying paying for it. It's not the hotelier that's paying for it. So
The guest pays for it.
There's nobody really at the disadvantage.
Mr. Speaker,
Continue.
can I suggest that we have another class, like we have 120. The small hotels at the guest houses, their rate is not 120 US, 120 or less. So that means if they charge from $50 a night to 120, they pay $3 US. Considering the fact that a lot of these small hotels have not opened because they haven't met the criteria quite rightly so to open, can we have another tier like of classes, see all those below $60, 60 US, which is more like the charge of a guest house. And you take that to 150 or $2 so that these small hotels can have a breather and they cannot be in the, because a 120, a hotel that charges 120 US is good 3-star class hotel, compared to a guest house that will charge 80 US. And I think that you should consider having another tier for these hotels, like $2, so you can get some relief, especially now.
So,
You're giving way?
Mr. Speaker, we keep using the term relief. There's no relief here. This is intended to be a tax-neutral tax. So, as in discussing with the EP properties, most, if not all, the EP properties are going to pass the $3 on to the consumer. They're not going to absorb it. In the case of the larger all-inclusives, because most of their business is through the tour operators, they're simply going to absorb the cost themselves. So they're currently paying it at 10%. Instead, now they're going to pay it 7% with the $6 per charge. But it's not going to affect their net rate. Most of the EP properties are going to be online, like with Expedia or Bookit.com, and it's just going to show up as a tax that is being collected. So they will actually collect it from the consumer. So if you take 7 nights at $3, you're talking about $20 US difference on an overall vacation. It's not an absorbent thing that's going to cause them to be any less competitive than they were before.
Continue, honorable member.
What the member from Castries East recommended, I can say to you, there was a tremendous amount of discussion about creating that third tier. And it was just too complicated. And then how low do you really go to make that happen? This is why, again, if I may, Minister of Tourism, that when we were talking about the Airbnb properties, originally the contract was going to be with Airbnb, and Airbnb was going to charge a percentage. And because Airbnb was collecting the money and doing it collaboratively with us like they have done with other destinations, that would have been easy. But sadly, Airbnb has decided not to do that anymore. So in fact, they've grandfathered who they've had in, but all of the new destinations, the government has to collect the taxes themselves. And so this is why we've gone with this recommendation, and we just felt it's not really going to marginalize anyone. So the small properties, when you look at the airfare to come to St. Lucia, $20 is not going to make that much difference in their competitiveness. It's not going to impose any additional burdens to the small properties, because this is a tax that they're going to pass on directly to the consumer.
Continue, honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, the audit function. Who will be in charge of the audit function to ensure that the levy is being collected accurately? Is it your tourism authority will have an audit arm? Hmm? So will there be any relationship with the Inland Revenue? Huh?
Honorable members, let's it's your presentation, so there.
Mr. Speaker, my concern still, Mr. Speaker, is that I don't want it to be I heard the Prime Minister, I don't want the small hotels or the small guest houses to be disproportioned in the taxes, because, as you know, they are under a lot of pressure at this point.